I'm going to be making some bullet point comparisons between the Garmin Fenix 6X and the Apple Watch Series 5, though really this is about Garmin Fenix watches in general, as I've had the 5, the 6, and the 7, and I've practically had every other Apple Watch that has come out. This is just the overall impression that I've been getting between both devices, so let's just get right into it. The Garmin Fenix, it tracks steps while driving. So I went to Tim Hortons to get a coffee, and apparently I took practically 50 to 60 steps. Now, overall, each day I average between 5,000 and 10,000 steps, depending on how active I decide to be. Plus, if I'm doing something of the likes of P90X, that's not necessarily going to really add to my steps too much. So it may not seem like a big deal, but it can be. So when I'm driving, I have to be more conscious about which arm I'm using when I'm turning the steering wheel. Less steps while mowing. So if you're mowing, if you're pretending you're a zombie and you have your arms out, you're holding on to your backpack and you're going hiking and you got your thumbs hooked into the strap and you're moving around, you are going to get less steps because it relies on the accelerometer in your watch to be moving your arm back and forth. I wouldn't be surprised if the French in me, with me being animated with my arm gestures, if I'm going to not be adding an extra half a mile to my watch. No cellular versions unless you have like the Forerunner 945 LTE, but for the most part, even if you did have that, you can't reply to text messages or talk on the phone or any of that because it's not predominantly a smartwatch. That's neither a good thing or a bad thing, but it is an observation. The phone app sucks. Strong statement. Let me back it up. So, basically, like when I got this watch a couple of days, there was an update for it, but it took nearly 2 or 3 hours before it finally showed up on my watch, even though I was connected to Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, the whole skit and skadoodle, and sank or did a sync with the watch and the phone. It just took forever. Also, if you want to get like weather information or anything that comes from your phone, you actually have to have the app running in the background. You can't go like on your Apple Watch or whatever other, or Apple iPhone. Any phone, doesn't matter the phone. You cannot get weather information unless it's running in the background, so you can't close that. Is that a deal breaker? Not really, but it's an observation, okay? Also, when you go to change watch faces, you got to load a second app for that called the Garmin IQ versus Garmin Connect, if I didn't get that mixed up. And when you're playing around with the watch faces, my goodness, does it ever hang on queuing install. Then you gotta lift up, swipe up on your phone. You gotta go back to Garmin Connect, make sure it's connected, then go back to Garmin IQ. Then it'll finally start connecting. And whether it's a Garmin 5X, a 6X, or a 7X, I haven't really noticed it getting any faster when it comes to that. So for me, that's why I'm saying that the app sucks. Apart from that, from the day-to-day metrics that you're going to see, I mean, sure, it works. But overall, I'm still giving it a thumbs down. Now to start talking good things about it. We started off trashing it. Now let's talk about the good things. Third-party watch faces. They can be really cool. I mean, I've got that Tacita or whatever it's called, Tactica, that everybody and their mother's aunt's uncle's sister is using. It's great. It's cool to be able to do that. Battery life. I don't care if it's the 11-day 5X or the 28-day 7X, depending on, what setting you put it in. The battery life is going to blow the piss out of any Apple Watch, okay? Overall, the watch can simply do more in terms of metrics, in terms of things that it's going to track if you care about that stuff. Again, that's neither a pro or a con. It's just, again, an observation. You may or may not need most of the features that are on there. I don't. The main reason I have one of these is because of the battery life and a few other things too. Not bound to Apple. Okay? That is a big thing. I can be with an iPhone, I can be with a Samsung Galaxy Watch or an LG or a Sony, doesn't matter. Hell, you can even be with a computer. You can't do that with an Apple Watch. The last thing that I want to talk about, which I didn't put in my list, is in terms of resiliency and the whole, cost and all that. Now, if we're going to talk about the 6X in 2023, not the 7, not the 5, the 6X versus a non-ultra watch, they're both the same price. In Canadian dollars, they're $570. So these are accurate to compare in terms of the price. Well, now on Amazon, you get this for $570, like I said, Canadian. It comes with sapphire. This thing, it's scratched up, okay? Because it's only using Zion glass. This is actual sapphire, okay? So it's more resilient for the, the dollar amount that you're going to spend on the watch. But again, that doesn't matter if you're comparing it to the Ultra, because it also has sapphire, although jerry-rig everything, I think did prove that the impurities in the Ultra is a little smidgen higher than what's used in the Garmin Fenix watches. This could potentially extend to the Enduro and other high-end Garmin watches. Like, there's more than just the Garmin Fenix. There's the Enduro, there's the Epics, there's, the deep dive aviation. Well, usually aviation, you don't want to deep dive. You know what I'm getting at. There's different series when it comes to the Garmin watches that are like $1,000 and above. Okay, so that's a big thing, resiliency. Forgot to mention that, which is another thumbs up for the Garmin Fenix. Now moving on to the Apple Watch, okay? Let's be real. I don't care if we're talking about the Ultra. The battery life on these, they suck. So this Apple Watch Series 5, or in general, because it's a non-Ultra, you're supposed to get about 18 hours of battery. I have 86% battery health left on my watch. I can easily squeeze over 40 hours on it. 43 and a half hours to be exact. I can outdo the Apple Watch Ultra. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, how? I'll explain that later when it comes to the intuitiveness of the watch. But overall, it sucks. It doesn't hold a candle or anything. Although OLED is probably brighter than a candle, but let's not get too technical. The Apple Watch in general, regardless of the generation you get, you're bound with iPhone. I don't care if you got a $10,000 Mac, an iPad, an iPod, anything else that's Apple. If it's not a phone, you're not going to use it. So this one in particular is an Apple Watch Series 5. So I need like iOS 11, I think, minimum, and an iPhone 6S and above, where if you had the newer Apple Watch Series 8, you would be forced to have a minimum of an iPhone, I almost called it an iPhone Series 8, an iPhone 8 and above with iOS 13 and higher. So you're bound to that. Again, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It depends. I generally stick with Apple for phones. Generally. What if I want to jump ship? Now I got to keep around a $2,000 phone just to have this piece of crap working? Okay? Non-ultra screens suck. So I've already talked about that a little bit when I was talking about the good points of the Garmin. This thing, even though you can't really see it, you'll just have to take my word for it. It's got a bunch of noticeable scratches, light scratches on it, even though I've been incredibly careful with it, over the years. It sucks, but I have to hold it in a certain light, and then I can see it, like the way the light refracts, you'll be able to be like, oh yeah, it's scratched up. Not getting that on that. I had a 5X for a super long time. It never had a single scratch on that damn thing. Again, $570. 6X Sapphire, $570. This, $570, again, Canadian before taxes. It's more fragile. Again, unless we're talking about the Ultra, which comes in at double the price of the 6X Sapphire. Okay? So, yeah, the screen sucks on a non-Ultra. OLED burn-in. Now, this is a thing that matters to talk about, but doesn't. And I'm going to mention it anyways, because I also don't want to make this comparison seem like it's biased, even though I'm not too sure which side of the fence I want to jump over on. I still want to talk about it, even though it's not really noticeable. If you go to the flashlight app, okay, and you look at the flashlight app, you're not going to be able to see it on here. You'll just have to take my word for it. because I always had the always on display and all this kind of stuff. I can see, the rings that I have generally, because this is my preferred watch face that I usually always have with the 3 rings at the bottom there. And I can see like a faint shadow or ghosting of it burnt into the screen. Now, does that really matter? Not really. And the reason why I say not really, not to discredit it, is because even if I go to a white background watch, you'll never have one that's fully white. It's always going to be circular, at least from what I've ever seen. You're not going to see the burn-in appear on any of your other watch faces. At least I haven't been able to see it. So it's a non-issue, but it's to say that if you go and look for it, it's still there. The phone app rocks. Let me back it up. Everything is instant. If you start changing the colors of your watch faces from your actual iPhone, it's done in real time. You don't have to hit the sync button and wait and wonder how long it's going to take. Every time there's a goddamn update, it is automatically there. There's no update, and then out of nowhere, an hour or 2 later after it's on my wrist, all of a sudden my Garmin watch, oh yeah, so by the way, there's an update. It's like, nice of you to finally show up. So right there, as simple as that, I just find that the phone app works better than Garmin Connect, plain and simple. I find the Apple Watch overall to simply be more comfortable. However, I must mention this. This is an authentic silicone Apple Watch band that came with my watch. I bought some third-party ones at a fraction of the price, and they look 97% to the Apple one. There's a little bit of a rub that you can kind of feel. There's almost like a shimmer in the light. I'm not being brainwashed, that the Apple branded bands have that the knockoffs don't. The biggest thing is that this is just comfortable, period. And I never get any like burn marks or rashes or anything like that. Whereas I did with the knockoff ones. If I wore them for at least maybe a couple of weeks, maybe sometimes it took up to a month. And I do shower with the watch, but sometimes you know what I mean? I'm just saying, if you're not careful with your hygiene on the wrist, or you're not washing the back of the watch like the bands, and it's an unauthentic Apple band, you are going to get some problems. Whereas this never had a problem. This is the authentic Garmin band. It's comfortable, but these things there, the strap thingies, whatever you call them, these things, okay? They can dig into your wrist a little bit even if you put it on looser, but you don't want it too loose that the watch starts to turn over either. Is it uncomfortable? No. I'm just simply stating, for my body, this is by far more comfortable. And again, with the knockoff cheap bands, they feel and look practically indistinguishable from a real Garmin. However, the material is just a smidgen slightly harder. Therefore, the corners of this piece here dug into my wrist to the point where I actually can't wear the knockoff bands. I can't do it, so I had to go back to the real band. Okay, so Apple Watch for me more comfortable, more accurate steps. I can, flap my arms around like I'm an owl. I can mow the lawn. I can and have gone hiking without the GPS on and any of that funky stuff. Just the watch on the wrist. I actually don't usually track using the GPS and all that stuff, and you're going to be like, oh my God, you're crazy. It's virtually like 98, 99% the same. Whether I'm actually walking, pumping my arm, or I'm keeping my thumbs in the strap of my hiking bag when I go hiking, or I'm mowing the lawn and I got my arms out like a goddamn zombie. This thing is just more accurate in my experience of over roughly, I want to say, half a decade of using these watches, both of them side by side. So that to me is a pretty big effing deal. Huge deal. Again, me moving my arm around, yeah, I've cranked in about 30 or 40 steps easily, okay? More intuitive. A lot of people use that word and, they kind of throw it around. I'm French, by the way, if that matters. So my first language isn't English, so hopefully I'm using the word properly. And yes, I did Google it And I still wasn't 100% sure. It's like, well, I'll just blame it on being French. It's not that this watch is not intuitive, unintuitive. It's just sweet baby Jesus. It takes a while to get used to because it can technically do so much more. Now, I understand that the new one has a touchscreen, so you can kind of navigate around quicker. But that's not what I want to talk about. If you want something that's just simple, and you leave it on a watch face that's like this, it just has everything on there. Your battery life at the top. You've got the weather right there. You just tap on it. You don't have to have the app running in the background, by the way, on your phone. And you'll just get the actual weather app from whatever one that you want, whether it's the Weather Network, the Weather Channel, shows you how cold it is or not how cold it is. And it's just, it's just absolutely amazing. And I love it. But, again, like I said, the other big thing is this, the tracking on this. I mean, when you click those 3 rings there, okay, Apple prides itself on that, and I want to talk to you a little bit about it. So, your rings, the red is the calories, okay? So, moving, exercising, standing, all of that stuff then based on your heart rate, how much you weigh, your height, your age, it'll take all that into consideration, and this seems to be pretty damn accurate again. And you'll start closing that red ring for the calories burnt. I can't seem to get a metric on my Fenix that does the same thing in terms of based on my movement. Well, sort of. It's kind of like just overall calories out. So they're similar, but I'm still a little bit iffy on it. They're actually probably pretty similar. But again, you have to go look for it, make sure you're doing active calories versus overall calories. Again, this watch can do more. So if you put on active calories, yes, this will be pretty similar to the red ring. Now, the green ring is really, really freaking cool, okay? Because all of these rings, by the way, close without me actually starting an actual activity. What happens here is, again, you choose how many calories you want to burn minimum a day. You can, change that all there. You can see that right there, okay? With this, it says completing at least 30 minutes of activity, which is good, at the level of above a brisk walk. So if you're shoveling, if you're jumping in place, you're doing P90X, you're walking really fast. Maybe you're jogging a little bit and you're doing a bunch of stuff. You're mowing the lawn and you're really sweating and you're like, oh my God, and your heart rate goes up. Your overall active green ring will start to close on its own, even if you're not tracking it. Because in the background, even with the always on display off or on, doesn't matter, it's tracking all of that based on how much you're exerting yourself. And it's just amazing. This one here, at least I myself, cannot find a Garmin equivalent. There's a lot more metrics that I can find on here, but not the one that I care the most about. And then finally, last but not least, your stand ring. Now this one has one because it's got like the move thing. So that one is pretty basic. This one, I feel it's intuitive because it's like right there in the goddamn rings. It'll say to you, you need to get up and move at least for 1 minute during 12 different hours in the day, right? You can get that on here, but I found to find the moving on here, I had to dig into it a little bit more. Battery stress, heart rate, and all that. My sleep, great. My ABC, my pulse ox, my HRV. Like, there's all these things, but in terms of the overall, how many times did I stand in a day and at least moved around for 1 minute? At least I haven't been able to easily just find that. Again, with Apple, it's all in the ring. Arguably, these are some of the 3 most important aspects of overall tracking of your body. Arguably, right? Calories actively burning. Did you just sit around all day? Then obviously that's going to be different than if you went jogging for an hour, right? Again, exercise ring, Did you just walk slowly for 5 kilometers, like really slowly? You might not even trigger a minute. Or did you push it? Because you got to push it a little bit. Holds you accountable to that. And then the whole standing up, moving around, you could just see it all there. Not saying it's not all there on here. I'm just saying I feel like it's a little bit more intuitive on the Apple Watch. Just the overall experience for me is better on the Apple Watch. In conclusion, what I'm basically saying is this. I appreciate both products practically equally. It's almost like a division, 50-50. If there was simply one thing that I could do to the Apple Watch to have it win me over 100%, would be, because I'm OCD about it, even though it shouldn't technically matter, is the Apple Watch. Now, I turned off the always-on display, by the way. That saves a lot of battery, like a good extra 10-something hours, I think it is. I usually get about 30, 35-ish hours, I think, with the always-on display, and turning it off and just seldomly tapping it, right? Again, in terms of intuitive, the rings here, when you tap on the rings to look at your metrics, I can go to the top and look at the rings at the top, right? And if I back out and I push back on it, it immediately remembers where in the scrolling position did I leave it. If I want to leave it there and I back out, I go back in, it's still there. I like to scroll down and just look at my total steps, what was the distance, and the flights climbed. Okay? So, yeah, to me, if we can get the battery life on this to be on par with Garmin, for me, it would maybe be game over. Because I can't afford to always be, you know what I mean, playing around with these two watches and keeping them. It's a lot of money. Is there anything, so that's a plus for the Apple for me, the battery life, if they change that one thing, the battery life, boom, game over. Garmin, could Garmin do anything to have me stay on board with them and not look at Apple? Probably their app. The whole app synergy, watch face, that kind of thing, you know? Having to rely so much on the phone. You might think you have to rely a lot on this, but really, even without your phone, doesn't matter. For the longest time, I didn't even have a cellular network. And I didn't even have a phone plan. And this thing was still bang on accurate with the GPS, the whole thing. Or even if I leave my phone at home again. So it's not dependent on it. And I can change a lot of things on here right from the watch, from what I remember in terms of the watch faces. Yeah, from what I remember, I can do quite a few things on here. Yeah, see? Like I can change all these different aspects of the watch face right from here. You cannot do that with third-party watch faces, by the way. So yeah. So overall, I like both equally, but I think it would be easier for Apple to win me over in the long run than it would be for Garmin. That's not a knock against Garmin at all. It isn't. Again, everybody's got personal preferences and things they care about, things they don't care about. So I know some people that just wear these for the heart rate monitor and don't even care about anything else. They put it on a very, very, very basic watch face. You know, something like this with just the time and the heart rate at the bottom. They don't care about their steps or nothing else, right? So for me, for the things that I care about, like I said, it's pretty divided evenly. But it's just a little bit easier for Apple to win me over. If they ever get an Ultra that lasts like a week with good continuous usage, actually using the GPS and all that stuff compared to, let's say, like an Epix, that would be a big, big deal for me. Let me know down below what you think. This video probably took a lot longer than it should have. It's kind of disgusting that it took me... Oh my god, did it really take that long? It shouldn't have taken that long, but it did. Anyhow, if you liked the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It does greatly help support the channel with the algorithm. This is not the main stuff I cover on my YouTube channel, but I'm still very passionate about this kind of stuff. even though it's not the bulk of my YouTube channel. It's like 5-10%, if that, of my channel. If you didn't like the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs down. I don't care. And I'll make sure your watch lasts 5 seconds. You look at it, and it slaps you in the head. It's like an involuntary magnetic pull, and it just bonks you right in the goddamn head. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, naturally that would be great. But if not, thanks for stopping by anyways. Take care, and maybe I'll see some of you in the next one. Bye for now.